In the days following their triumphant return to Centrium, Arra found herself caught in a whirlwind of activity. Debriefings, strategy meetings, and endless discussions about the future of the Orion Alliance and its place in the galaxy. It was a dizzying experience, a stark contrast to the adrenaline-fueled chaos of their mission on Arra's Septum. But amidst the bustle and the noise, Arra found herself drawn to the quiet solitude of her quarters, a place where she could reflect on all that had happened and all that was yet to come. As she sat at her desk, the soft glow of the city lights filtering through her window, Arra's thoughts turned to the friends and comrades they had lost. Rafe and Kell, the brave souls who had given their lives so that others might live. The resistance fighters of Arra's Septum, who had laid down their futures for the chance at a better tomorrow. Their sacrifices weighed heavily upon her, a burden of grief and responsibility that she knew she would carry with her for the rest of her days. But even as she mourned their loss, Arra knew that their deaths had not been in vain. They had died fighting for something greater than themselves, for a cause that was worth the ultimate price. And as she reflected on the battles they had fought and the challenges they had overcome, Arra couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. They had struck a blow against the Malaxian war machine, had shown the galaxy that even the mightiest of empires could be brought to its knees by the courage and determination of a few brave souls. But even as she savored the sweet taste of victory, Arra knew that their fight was far from over. The Malaxians were still out there, still a threat to the peace and stability of the galaxy. And the Orion Alliance, for all its strength and unity, was not invulnerable to the forces of darkness that lurked in the shadows. There would be more battles to come, more sacrifices to be made in the name of freedom and justice. And as Arra looked out over the glittering cityscape of Centrium, she couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation at the challenges that lay ahead. But even as the weight of her responsibilities pressed down upon her, Arra knew that she would not have to face them alone. She had her crew, her family forged in the fires of war and tempered by the unbreakable bonds of camaraderie. And with their strength and their courage at her side, Arra knew that there was no obstacle they could not overcome, no enemy they could not defeat. As the night wore on and the city lights began to fade, Arra's thoughts turned to the future, to the path that lay ahead. She knew that there would be difficult choices to make, hard truths to confront about the nature of war and the price of peace. But even as she grappled with the weight of her responsibilities, Arra felt a sense of clarity and purpose settle over her. She had been forged in the crucible of conflict, had been tested and tempered by the fires of adversity. And now, as she looked out over the sleeping city and the stars beyond, Arra knew that she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. She would continue to fight for the cause of justice and freedom, would continue to strive for a better future for all the peoples of the galaxy. For that was the way of the Orion Alliance, the way of the heroes who had come before her, and the heroes who would follow in her footsteps. And as long as there were those who were willing to stand up against the darkness, to fight for the light even in the face of impossible odds, Arra knew that there was still hope for a brighter tomorrow. The road ahead would be long and fraught with peril, but Arra was ready to face it head-on. The aftermath of their daring mission to Arra's Septum had brought a brief respite for Arra and her crew, a chance to catch their breath and lick their wounds in the relative safety of Centrium. But even as they savored the sweet taste of victory and mourned the bitter losses they had endured, the realities of their position soon came crashing back down upon them. As elite operatives of the Orion Alliance, their skills and their courage were in high demand, sought after by military commanders and political leaders alike. And with the Malaxian threat still looming on the horizon, the calls for their services grew louder and more insistent with each passing day. Arra found herself inundated with mission requests and intelligence briefings, each one painting a grim picture of the challenges that lay ahead. The Malaxians were on the move, their armies massing on the borders of Allied space, and their fleets prowling the hyperlanes like hungry predators. There were whispers of a new weapon, a doomsday device that could tip the balance of power in the galaxy and bring the Orion Alliance to its knees. And there were rumors of a traitor in their midst, a high-ranking official who had been seduced by the promises of power and riches offered by the Malaxian overlords. As Arra pored over the reports and the intelligence feeds, she felt a sense of dread and uncertainty wash over her. The challenges they faced were daunting, the stakes higher than ever before. And with each new mission that crossed her desk, she couldn't help but feel the weight of her responsibilities pressing down upon her like a physical burden. But even as the stress and the pressure mounted, Arra knew that she could not falter, could not let the doubts and the fears that gnawed at her take hold. She was a leader now, a symbol of hope and courage for the people of the Orion Alliance. And she had a duty to her crew, to her comrades in arms, to stand tall in the face of adversity and lead them through the battles to come. As she gathered her team for a mission briefing, Arra could see the same determination and resolve etched on their faces. They had been through hell together, had faced down impossible odds and emerged victorious. And they were ready to do it again, to lay down their lives and their futures for the cause of freedom and justice in the galaxy. Marcus, the grizzled veteran who had become her rock and her mentor, stood tall and proud at her side, his eyes glinting with the fire of a warrior's spirit. Zora, the brilliant technician who had kept their ship and their mission alive through the darkest of times, nodded her readiness, her fingers already dancing across the keys of her datapad as she prepared for the challenges ahead. And the others, Jax and TV, the wounded warriors who had fought with a courage and tenacity that defied belief. Nara and Jack, the former captives who had become valued members of their crew, they all stood ready and willing, their spirits unbroken by the trials they had endured. Together, they were the unbreakable few, the heroes of the Orion Alliance and the guardians of the light. And as Arra looked out at their faces, she felt a sense of pride and purpose swell within her, a renewed conviction in the righteousness of their cause. The road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, the challenges they faced more daunting than ever before. But with the strength of their bond and the fire of their determination, Arra knew that they would not falter, would not fail in their duty to the people of the galaxy. For they were the best of the best, the elite operatives of the Orion Alliance, and they would continue to fight, to strive for a better tomorrow, no matter the cost. As the briefing came to a close and the team began to disperse to their duties, Arra felt a sense of calm and focus settle over her. The doubts and the fears that had plagued her were gone, replaced by a steely resolve and an unshakable faith in the strength of her crew. They had a mission to complete, a galaxy to save, and they would not rest until the job was done, until the forces of darkness were driven back and the light of freedom shone once more across the stars. The new challenges that lay ahead were daunting, but Arra was ready to face them head-on. For she was a leader now, a hero of the Orion Alliance. As the Dawnbreaker hung in the void of space, its crew preparing for the next phase of their ongoing mission, Marcus found himself alone in the ship's dimly lit mess hall. The grizzled veteran sat hunched over a table, a half-empty bottle of Orion whiskey, and a battered tin cup his only companions. He had always been a solitary figure, a man more comfortable with the cold steel of a blaster in his hand than the warm embrace of camaraderie. But the events of the past few months had changed him, had forged bonds of friendship and loyalty that he had never thought possible. As he took another swig of the fiery liquid, Marcus's thoughts turned to Arra, the young lieutenant who had become like a daughter to him. He had watched her grow and mature over the course of their mission, had seen her transform from a raw recruit into a true leader, a hero worthy of the Orion name. And now, as he contemplated the future and the challenges that lay ahead, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and protectiveness well up within him. Arra was special, a once-in-a-generation talent with the potential to change the galaxy for the better. And he would be damned if he let anything happen to her, if he let the darkness that lurked in the shadows snuff out the light of her spirit. But even as he savored the warmth of the whiskey and the glow of his paternal affection, Marcus knew that he had a decision to make. The life of a soldier was all he had ever known, the heat of battle and the rush of adrenaline, the only things that made him feel truly alive. And yet, as he looked back on the long years of his service, on the scars and the wounds that crisscrossed his body and his soul, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of weariness, a longing for something more than the endless cycle of violence and death. He had given his life to the Orion Alliance, had fought and bled and sacrificed for the cause of freedom and justice in the galaxy. And now, as he entered the twilight of his career, he couldn't help but wonder if it had all been worth it, if the price he had paid had been too high. But then he thought of Arra and the others, of the brave men and women who had become his family in the fires of war, and he knew that he could never turn his back on them, could never abandon them to face the darkness alone. With a grunt of effort, Marcus pushed himself to his feet, the bottle of whiskey forgotten on the table. He had made his decision, had chosen the path that lay before him. He would stay with Arra, and the crew of the Dawnbreaker would fight at their side until the bitter end. For they were more than just his comrades in arms, more than just his friends. They were his purpose, his reason for living. And he would not rest until the galaxy was safe, until the forces of darkness were driven back, and the light of freedom shone once more across the stars. As he made his way through the ship's corridors, Marcus felt a sense of renewed energy and determination fill his aged frame. The road ahead would be long and fraught with peril, but he was ready to face it head-on. For he was a warrior of Orion, and his story was far from over. As he entered the ship's command center, Arra looked up from the holographic display, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of the grizzled veteran. "Marcus," she said, a note of concern in her voice. "Is everything all right?" But Marcus just smiled, a rare glint of humor in his eyes. "Never better, kid," he said, clapping a hand on her shoulder. "Just figured it was time for this old soldier to get back in the fight." And as he took his place at her side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Marcus knew that he had made the right choice. For he was where he belonged, at the side of the heroes who would change the galaxy forever. And together they would fight on, until the last breath and the last bullet. For that was the way of the warrior, the way of the Orion Alliance. And it was a way that Marcus would follow, until the end of his days. The Dawnbreaker hung in the void, its battered hull illuminated by the soft glow of distant stars. On the bridge, Arra stood before the holographic display, her eyes fixed on the swirling galaxies and nebulae that stretched out before her. She had come so far, had faced challenges and triumphs beyond anything she could have imagined when she first set out on this journey. And yet, as she looked out at the vast expanse of the universe, she couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation, a thrill of excitement at the adventures that lay ahead. Behind her, the crew of the Dawnbreaker stood at their stations, their faces etched with the same determination and resolve that had carried them through the darkest of times. Marcus, the grizzled veteran, who had become her rock and her mentor. Zara, the brilliant technician who had kept their ship and their mission alive. Jax and TV, Nara and Jack, the warriors and the survivors who had become her family in the fires of war. Together they had accomplished the impossible, had struck a blow against the forces of darkness, and brought hope to a galaxy on the brink of despair. But their work was far from over, and the challenges that lay ahead would test them like never before. There were rumors of a new threat rising in the outer reaches of the galaxy, a force of such power and malevolence that even the mighty Orion Alliance trembled at its name. There were whispers of ancient artifacts and forgotten technologies, of secrets buried deep in the ruins of long-dead civilizations that could hold the key to victory or destruction. And there were the Malaxians, the implacable foe that had haunted their every step, the enemy that would stop at nothing to see the Orion Alliance crushed beneath their iron heel. They were still out there, still plotting and scheming, still hungry for the power and the glory that they believed was their birthright. But Arra and her crew would not falter, would not back down in the face of the coming storm. They had been forged in the crucible of war, had been tempered by the unbreakable bonds of camaraderie and sacrifice, and they would fight on, no matter the cost, no matter the odds. As she turned to face her crew, Arra felt a sense of pride and purpose swell within her. They were the best of the best, the heroes of the Orion Alliance, and they would not rest until the galaxy was safe, until the light of freedom shone once more across the stars. "All right, people," she said, her voice ringing with the authority of command. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us. But I know that together we can face anything that comes our way. We're the Dawnbreaker crew, the unbreakable few, and we will not fail." A chorus of cheers and shouts of agreement filled the bridge as the crew rallied around their leader, their captain, their friend. And as the stars stretched out before them, beckoning them onward to new adventures and new challenges. They knew that they were ready for whatever lay ahead. As the Dawnbreaker leaped forward, its engines roaring with the promise of new horizons and untold wonders, Arra felt a smile tug at the corners of her lips. The road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but she was ready to face it head-on. For she was a leader now, a hero of the Orion Alliance, and her story was just beginning. With Arra at the helm and her crew at her side, the stage was set for a new chapter in the saga of the Dawnbreaker. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, and there were sure to be untold adventures waiting for them in the depths of space. Perhaps they would uncover the secrets of an ancient alien civilization, long thought lost to the mists of time. Or maybe they would find themselves embroiled in a bitter war between rival factions, each vying for control of a vital resource or strategic location. There might be daring heists to pull off, with the crew using their unique skills to infiltrate heavily guarded installations and make off with valuable intel or powerful artifacts. Or there could be tense negotiations with hostile alien races, as Arra and her team fought to forge alliances and keep the peace in a galaxy on the brink of chaos. But no matter what challenges lay ahead, one thing was certain: the crew of the Dawnbreaker would face them together, bound by the unbreakable bonds of friendship and loyalty that had seen them through so much already. They were more than just a team, more than just a crew. They were a family, forged in the heat of battle and tempered by the sacrifices they had made. And as long as they had each other, there was nothing they couldn't accomplish. So as the Dawnbreaker charted a course for the unknown, its crew stood ready to face whatever the universe had in store. And their story was far from over. I hope you enjoyed this story. As you can tell, the author has a lot more that they want to write in this universe, so leave a like and a comment if you'd like to see it.